Get your filthy hands off my floor before I have you thrown out like garbage. Victoria Sterling's hand cracked across Marcus Thompson's face so hard his glasses flew off and shattered against the marble wall. The $50 frames he'd saved 3 months to buy, gone in 1 second of rage. Marcus didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there in his faded janitor uniform, mop still dripping blood trickling from his split lip. What Victoria didn't know, the quiet black man she just slapped held 3 patents worth $47 million. Patents that powered her entire company. Before you continue, comment below what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. The slap echoed through the empty executive floor like a thunderclap. Marcus Thompson felt the sting spread across his left cheek, hot and sharp. His glasses hit the wall, the cheap plastic frames cracking on impact. For a moment, everything went silent, just the soft drip of his mop water pooling on the marble floor. Victoria Sterling stood over him, her designer dress soaked from the knee down, her face twisted with fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she screamed. "This dress costs more than you make in a year." Marcus kept his eyes on the floor. 42 years old, and he'd learned long ago that looking a woman like Victoria Sterling in the eye only made things worse. "I put up a wet floor sign, ma'am," he said quietly. "It's right there by the elevator." "Are you talking back to me?" "No, ma'am. Just explaining." "You don't explain anything to me." Victoria stepped closer, her Louboutin heels clicking against the wet marble. "You're a janitor. You clean up messes. That's all you are. That's all you'll ever be." Marcus said nothing. He thought about Destiny, his 8-year-old daughter probably already asleep at Mrs. Robinson's apartment. He thought about the rent due in 6 days. He thought about the medical bills still piling up 18 months after Sarah died. He needed this job, so he stayed silent. "Look at me when I'm speaking to you," Victoria demanded. Marcus raised his eyes slowly. Victoria Sterling was everything he wasn't. White, wealthy, powerful. Her father had built Sterling Industries from nothing, and when he died 3 years ago, she'd inherited the whole empire. 38 years old, never worked a real day in her life, and now she controlled the lives of 12,000 employees, including his. "I want you to apologize," Victoria said, her voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. "I'm sorry about your dress, ma'am." "That's not good enough." She grabbed his collar, yanking him forward. Marcus could smell the wine on her breath. Expensive wine, probably older than his daughter. "Get on your knees and clean my shoes." Marcus felt something crack inside him. Not break, just crack. A hairline fracture in the wall he'd built around his pride over the past 5 years. "Ma'am, Did I stutter?" Victoria's grip tightened. "Get on your knees." Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and for just a moment he forgot about the rent, forgot about the bills, forgot about everything except the fact that he was a human being, standing in front of someone who saw him as less than dirt. "No," he said. The word hung in the air between them. Victoria's eyes widened. "What did you say?" "I said no, ma'am. I'll clean the floor. I'll work my shift. But I won't kneel down and clean your shoes like some kind of—" The second slap was harder than the first. This time, Marcus tasted blood. "You're fired," Victoria hissed. "Get out of my building." Marcus touched his lip, looked at the blood on his fingers. Something shifted in his chest. Not anger exactly. Something quieter. Something that had been sleeping for a long time. "You can't fire me for refusing to—" "I can do whatever I want. This is my company. My building, my floor." Victoria pulled out her phone. "Security, I need someone removed from the 40th floor. Immediately." Marcus bent down slowly, picking up the broken pieces of his glasses. His hands were steady. His heart was not. "I have a daughter," he said quietly. 8 years old. Her mother died a year and a half ago. This job is all I have." Victoria laughed. actually laughed. "That's not my problem, is it? Maybe you should have thought about your daughter before you talked back to me." The elevator dinged. Two security guards stepped out. Derek Chen, the head of security, and a younger guard Marcus didn't recognize. "This man needs to be escorted out," Victoria said, not even looking at them. "He assaulted me." Marcus's head snapped up. "What I never—" "He grabbed my arm and threatened me," Victoria continued smoothly. "I want him banned from the premises. Permanently." Derek hesitated. He'd known Marcus for 3 years. Good man, hard worker, never caused trouble. "Ms. Sterling, I was watching the cameras. I didn't see—" "Are you questioning me, Derek?" Derek's jaw tightened. He had a wife, 2 kids, a mortgage. He'd seen what happened to people who questioned Victoria Sterling. "No, ma'am," he said finally. "Come on, Marcus, let's go." Marcus felt Derek's hand on his arm, firm but not rough. A small kindness in a moment of cruelty. "My things," Marcus said. "My locker." "We'll send them to you," Derek said quietly. "I'm sorry, man. I really am." As they walked toward the elevator, Marcus turned back one last time. Victoria was already on her phone, probably calling someone to clean up the water she'd slipped in. She didn't even glance his way. He was invisible again, just like always. The night air hit Marcus like a wall when he stepped outside. November in Chicago, cold enough to see your breath, cold enough to make your bones ache. He had no coat. It was still in his locker, along with his wallet, his keys, his phone. Derek had promised to bring them out, but that could take an hour, maybe more. Marcus sat down on the concrete steps of Sterling Industries, the cold seeping through his thin janitor uniform. Above him, the building rose 40 stories into the night sky, its glass windows glittering with light. His hands were still shaking. "Marcus." He looked up. Rosa Martinez stood in the service entrance doorway, her gray hair pulled back in its usual tight bun, her cleaning cart parked behind her. "Rosa, what are you doing here?" "I heard what happened." She sat down next to him, pulling off her own coat and draping it over his shoulders. "Derek told me. The whole floor saw it on the monitors." "Saw what?" "Her hitting you." Rosa's voice dropped to a whisper. "Twice. Derek was supposed to delete the footage, but he saved it first. Said he couldn't just let it disappear." Marcus stared at her. "Why would he do that?" "Because not everyone in that building is a monster, Marcus." Rosa pulled a small notebook from her pocket. Worn leather pages yellowed with age. "I've been keeping records for 25 years. Every time someone like Victoria treats someone like us like garbage. Names, dates, witnesses." "Why?" "Because someday someone's going to care." Rosa pressed the notebook into his hands. Tonight might be that day. Marcus looked down at the notebook. Page after page of careful handwriting. Incidents, complaints, humiliations, all documented, all ignored. "What am I supposed to do with this?" "I don't know yet." Rosa stood up, brushing off her uniform. "But I know who Victoria Sterling really is, and I know who you really are, Marcus." He frowned. "What do you mean?" Rosa smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "I've been working here since before Victoria's father died. I remember when he bought those patents. The Thompson patents, they called them. Revolutionary technology. Changed the whole company." She paused. "The engineer who invented them, young black man from MIT, sold them for $50,000 because his wife was dying and he needed the money fast. The patents are worth $47 million now." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "How did you—" "I pay attention," Rosa said simply. "Nobody notices the cleaning lady. That's our superpower." She started to walk back inside, then stopped. "Your daughter's name is Destiny, right?" "Yes." "Beautiful name." Rosa looked at him over her shoulder. "Don't let them make her father invisible, Marcus. Not anymore." She disappeared through the service door, leaving Marcus alone with the notebook, the cold and the weight of everything he'd kept hidden for 5 years. The bus ride to Mrs. Robinson's apartment took 45 minutes. Derek had finally brought out Marcus's things, his wallet, his phone, his old army jacket from 20 years ago. He'd also slipped Marcus a USB drive. The footage, Derek had whispered. Unedited. She doesn't know I have it. Now Marcus sat on the rattling CTA bus watching the city lights blur past the window, trying to figure out what to do next. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Robinson. Destiny's fine. Fell asleep watching her movie. Take your time. Marcus closed his eyes. 8 years old. That's how old Destiny was when Sarah first got sick. She'd watched her mother fade away over 18 months. Hospitals, treatments, hope, despair, and finally silence. And through all of it, Marcus had kept working, kept fighting, kept telling her everything would be okay. But nothing was okay. Nothing had been okay since the day he walked into that lawyer's office and signed away his life's work for enough money to maybe save his wife. It hadn't been enough. The money ran out. Sarah died anyway. And Marcus was left with a mountain of debt, a grieving daughter, and a job mopping floors in the building that had made millions from his genius. He'd told himself it didn't matter. The patents were just ideas. Sarah was real. Destiny was real. Pride didn't pay bills. But tonight, something had changed. Victoria Sterling had looked at him like he was nothing. Worse than nothing. She'd slapped him, humiliated him, tried to make him kneel. And the whole time she had no idea that every dollar she'd ever earned came from his mind, his work, his sleepless nights in a cramped MIT lab 20 years ago. The bus stopped at his corner. Marcus stepped off into the cold. Rosa's notebook in one pocket, Derek's USB drive in the other. For 5 years he'd been invisible. Maybe it was time to change that. Mrs. Robinson answered the door in her bathrobe, her white hair in curlers, her eyes soft with concern. "Marcus, honey, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Long night," he said, forcing a smile. "Destiny asleep. Out like a light. That child could sleep through a hurricane." Mrs. Robinson peered at his face, her expression sharpening. "Is that blood on your lip?" Marcus touched his mouth, wincing. "It's nothing." "That's not nothing. Come inside, let me clean that up. I should get Destiny home. That child is warm and comfortable in my guest room. You're going to sit down, let me fix that lip and tell me what happened." Mrs. Robinson's voice left no room for argument. She was 73 years old and had raised 6 children of her own. She knew trouble when she saw it. Marcus let her lead him to the kitchen table. Let her dab antiseptic on his split lip, let her press a bag of frozen peas to his swelling cheek. And slowly, haltingly, he told her everything. The wet floor, Victoria's rage, the slaps, the lies, getting fired. When he finished, Mrs. Robinson was silent for a long moment. "What are you going to do?" she finally asked. "I don't know. Find another job, I guess. Something that pays enough to—" "That's not what I'm asking." Mrs. Robinson set down the frozen peas and looked at him. Really looked at him the way she had when Sarah was dying and Marcus was falling apart. "That woman assaulted you. In front of witnesses. On camera. What are you going to do about it?" Marcus shook his head. "She's a billionaire, Mrs. Robinson. I'm a janitor." "You're a father," Mrs. Robinson corrected firmly. "You're a man. And from what Rosa told me last month, you're a hell of a lot more than a janitor." Marcus went still. "Rosa told you." "We talk. Old ladies gossip. It's what we do." Mrs. Robinson reached across the table and took his hands in hers. Her skin was paper-thin, spotted with age, but her grip was strong. "Marcus, I've known you for 3 years. I watched you work double shifts while Sarah was in hospice. I watched you hold that little girl together when her whole world fell apart. I've never seen you feel sorry for yourself, never seen you give up." She squeezed his hands tighter. "Don't give up now. Not when you finally have a chance to fight back." Marcus stared at their joined hands. His were rough, calloused from years of manual labor. Hands that had once designed revolutionary technology. hands that now pushed mops and emptied trash cans. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "Not for me, for Destiny. If I fight this and lose, we lose everything." "And if you don't fight?" Mrs. Robinson's voice was gentle but firm. "What does Destiny learn then? That her father can be slapped and humiliated and thrown away, and all he does is take it." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. He thought about Destiny's face when she'd asked him 2 weeks ago why he always looked so tired. He'd told her it was just work. But the truth was heavier than that. The truth was that every day he walked into a building that had stolen his future cleaned floors for people who would never know his name, and came home with just enough energy to pretend everything was fine. "I don't know how to fight someone like her," he said. Mrs. Robinson smiled. "You don't have to do it alone. Rosa's been collecting evidence for 25 years. That security guard saved the footage. And you have something Victoria Sterling will never have." "What's that?" "The truth." Mrs. Robinson released his hands and stood up, shuffling toward the hallway. "Now go get some sleep. Your daughter needs her father rested and ready to fight." Marcus sat alone in the kitchen for a long time after she left Rosa's notebook open in front of him. Page after page of injustice. Page after page of silence. Not anymore. At 6 in the morning, Marcus crept into Mrs. Robinson's guest room. Destiny was curled up in the small bed, her braids spread across the pillow, her favorite stuffed bear, Mr. Whiskers, clutched against her chest. He sat on the edge of the bed watching her sleep. She looked so much like Sarah. The same nose, the same curve of her cheek, the same way her lips parted slightly when she dreamed. "Hey, baby girl," he whispered. "Wake up." Destiny's eyes fluttered open. For a moment she looked confused. Then she saw his face and bolted upright. "Daddy, what happened to your lip?" Marcus touched the cut which had scabbed over during the night. "Just a little accident at work. Nothing to worry about." Destiny wasn't buying it. She scrambled across the bed and wrapped her arms around his neck, holding on tight. "You're lying," she said into his shoulder. "You always touch your ear when you lie." Despite everything, Marcus felt himself smile. Sarah used to say the same thing. "You're too smart for your own good. You know that." Mommy said that's the best kind of smart. Destiny pulled back her dark eyes, searching his face. "Did someone hurt you?" Marcus hesitated. He'd spent so long protecting Destiny from the ugliness of the world. She'd already lost so much, her mother, her home, her sense of safety. How could he tell her that her father had been slapped by his boss and thrown out on the street? But then he remembered Mrs. Robinson's words. "What does Destiny learn if all you do is take it?" "Yes," he said finally. "Someone hurt me. Someone who thinks she's better than everyone else." Destiny's face hardened, an expression that looked remarkably like Sarah when she was angry. "Who?" "My boss. The CEO of the company where I worked." Marcus took a deep breath. "She hit me, Destiny. And she fired me for not letting her treat me like I was worthless." "But you're not worthless." Destiny's voice was fierce. "You're the best daddy in the whole world." Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. "Thank you, baby girl." "What are you going to do?" It was the same question Mrs. Robinson had asked. The same question Rosa's notebook asked on every page. The same question Marcus had been running from for 5 years. He looked at his daughter, this beautiful, brave little girl, who had lost her mother and kept going, who had watched her father struggle and never complained, who still believed he could do anything. He couldn't let her down. "I'm going to fight," he said. Destiny nodded solemnly, as if this was exactly what she expected to hear. "Good," she said. "Mommy always said you were the smartest person she ever met. She said you could do anything if you just believed in yourself." Marcus pulled her close, breathing in the smell of her hair. Strawberry shampoo and something uniquely Destiny. "When did you get so wise?" he murmured. "Mrs. Robinson lets me watch a lot of talk shows," Destiny said matter-of-factly. Oprah is very inspirational. Marcus laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. It felt good. It felt like waking up. Okay, he said, standing up and lifting Destiny onto his hip like he used to when she was smaller. Here's the plan. We're going to go home, get cleaned up, and make some phone calls. Phone calls to who? To some people who might be able to help us fight back. Destiny grinned. Can I help? Always, baby girl. Marcus kissed her forehead. Always. The apartment was small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen, barely big enough for a table. But it was theirs, and for now, it was home. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, Rose's notebook spread open in front of him, Derek's USB drive plugged into his ancient laptop. Destiny sat across from him doing her homework with the intense concentration she brought to everything. The footage was worse than he remembered. There was Victoria stumbling out of the elevator clearly drunk. There was Marcus mopping the floor, the wet floor sign clearly visible behind him. There was the moment she slipped her dress getting soaked, her face twisting with rage. And then the first slap. The demand that he kneel. His refusal. The second slap. Every moment captured in crystal clarity. Marcus watched it 3 times, feeling his anger build with each viewing. This woman had assaulted him, lied about it, and tried to destroy his life, all because he'd refused to kneel before her like a servant. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Jerome Williams, night shift security. Rosa gave me your number. Can we meet? Marcus frowned. He didn't know anyone named Jerome Williams. Who are you? He typed back. The response came quickly. I saw what happened last night. I have more footage. Stuff Derek doesn't know about. Meet me at the diner on 47th Street at noon. Marcus stared at the message. This could be a trap. Victoria Sterling had resources he couldn't imagine. She could easily pay someone to set him up. But it could also be an ally. Another witness. Another piece of the puzzle. Daddy. Destiny looked up from her homework. Is everything okay? Marcus made a decision. Everything's fine, baby girl. I just have to go meet someone. Mrs. Robinson will come stay with you for a couple hours, okay? Is it about the fight? Yes. Destiny nodded seriously. Be careful, Daddy. Always. Marcus grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Rosa's notebook tucked into his pocket like a talisman. The fight was just beginning. The diner on 47th Street smelled like coffee and bacon grease, the kind of place where working people came to eat before their shifts and nobody asked too many questions. Marcus pushed through the door and scanned the booths, looking for someone who might be Jerome Williams. A young black man in the corner raised his hand, mid-20s, clean-shaven, wearing a security uniform under his jacket. His eyes were nervous, but determined. Marcus slid into the booth across from him. You're Jerome. Yeah. Jerome glanced around, lowering his voice. Thanks for coming. I wasn't sure you would. You said you have footage. More than footage. Jerome pulled out his phone, keeping it below the table. I've been working night security at Sterling for 8 months. I've seen things, Mr. Thompson. Things that would make your stomach turn. Like what? Jerome hesitated, his fingers drumming against the phone case. Last night wasn't the first time Victoria Sterling put her hands on somebody. 3 months ago, she threw a coffee cup at Maria Santos, one of the cleaning ladies. Hit her in the face, gave her a black eye. Maria filed a complaint. Know what happened? Marcus shook his head. They paid her off. $5,000 and a non-disclosure agreement. If she talked, she'd lose everything. Jerome's jaw tightened. Maria has 4 kids. She didn't have a choice. How do you know all this? Because Derek made me delete the footage. Jerome finally looked Marcus in the eye. But I didn't delete it. I copied it first. Every incident, every cover-up, every time Victoria Sterling acted like the rules don't apply to her, I saved it all. Marcus felt his heart rate quicken. Why? Because my grandmother cleaned offices for 40 years. She used to come home with stories about how they treated her like she was invisible, like she didn't matter. Jerome's voice cracked slightly. She died last year. Never got to see anybody held accountable. I promised myself I wouldn't let that happen again. A waitress appeared, and they both ordered coffee. When she left, Marcus leaned forward. How much footage are we talking about? 18 incidents over 8 months. Everything from verbal abuse to what she did to you last night. Jerome slid his phone across the table, showing a folder of video files. This is just from my shifts. God knows what happens during the day. Marcus stared at the screen. 18 incidents. 18 times Victoria Sterling had treated someone like garbage, and 18 times the company had covered it up. Why come to me? He asked. Why now? Jerome took a deep breath. Because last night was different. She didn't just yell at you or throw something. She hit you, twice. And then she lied about it, tried to say you attacked her. He shook his head. I watched the whole thing on the monitors. Derek told me to delete it, and I said I would, but I couldn't. Not this time. Derek saved a copy too. I know, we talked this morning. Jerome glanced around again. There's more of us, Mr. Thompson. People who are sick of watching her get away with everything. Rosa's been documenting stuff for decades. Emily Chen in the executive office has access to emails and internal communications. We've been waiting for someone brave enough to actually fight back. Marcus thought about destiny, about Mrs. Robinson's words, about the decades of injustice recorded in Rosa's worn notebook. I'm not brave, he said quietly. I'm just tired of being invisible. Jerome smiled for the first time. That's the same thing, isn't it? The waitress returned with their coffee. Marcus wrapped his hands around the warm mug, trying to organize his thoughts. If we do this, if we actually try to take her down, she'll come after all of us. You know that, right? She has lawyers' money connections. We have nothing. We have the truth, Jerome said. And we have each other. Marcus looked at this young man across from him, a kid really barely older than Marcus was when he invented those patents. A kid who had saved 18 videos because his grandmother died without ever seeing justice. Okay, Marcus said. Tell me everything. They talked for 2 hours. Jerome laid out the network of people who had quietly been documenting Victoria's behavior for years. Rosa Martinez with her notebooks. Emily Chen with her access to company emails. A former HR manager named Patricia, who had quit rather than cover up another incident. A maintenance worker named Carlos, who had witnessed Victoria berating a pregnant employee until she cried. Each person had a piece of the puzzle. Each person had stayed silent out of fear. What changed? Marcus asked. Why are people willing to talk now? Jerome set down his coffee cup. You did. What do you mean? You stood up to her. You said no. Jerome's eyes were intense. Do you know how rare that is? Most people just take it. They bow their heads, they apologize, they let her treat them like dirt because they're scared of losing their jobs. But you looked her in the eye and refused to kneel. Marcus remembered the moment. Victoria's hand on his collar. Her breath hot with wine, demanding he get on his knees. I wasn't trying to be brave, he said. I just couldn't do it. I have a daughter. She looks up to me. I couldn't go home and face her knowing I'd gotten on my knees for someone who sees me as less than human. That's exactly why people are willing to fight now, because you showed them it's possible. They agreed to meet again that evening at Rosa's apartment. Jerome would bring the footage. Marcus would bring Rosa's notebooks, and they would start building their case. As Marcus stood to leave, Jerome grabbed his arm. Mr. Thompson, there's something else you should know. What? Jerome's expression was troubled. Victoria knows she's in trouble. Derek told me she spent all morning on the phone with her lawyers. They're preparing a counter-story saying you've been stalking her, that you're mentally unstable, that you have a history of violence. Marcus felt his stomach drop. That's not true. None of that is true. I know. But truth doesn't matter when you have money and connections. Jerome released his arm. Be careful. She's going to come after you with everything she has. Marcus walked out of the diner into the gray November afternoon, Jerome's warning echoing in his head. Victoria Sterling wasn't just going to let this go. She was going to fight back. and she had a lot more weapons than he did. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number different from Jerome's. "Mr. Thompson, this is Emily Chen from Sterling Industries. Rosa gave me your contact. I have information you need to see. Can you meet me tonight?" Before he could respond, another text came through. "Victoria is planning something big. Please hurry." Marcus stared at the screen. 2 allies in one day, a network of witnesses, evidence of 18 incidents, and a powerful woman who would stop at nothing to destroy him. He texted Emily back, where and when. Her response was immediate. "Rosa's apartment, 7 p.m. Bring everything you have." Marcus pocketed his phone and headed for the bus stop. He had 6 hours to prepare for whatever came next. Back at the apartment, Destiny was sitting at the kitchen table with Mrs. Robinson working on a drawing. She looked up when Marcus walked in, her face brightening. "Daddy, you're back." "Hey, baby girl." He kissed the top of her head, nodding gratefully at Mrs. Robinson. "Everything okay here?" "We made cookies," Destiny announced proudly. "Mrs. Robinson taught me her secret recipe. The secret is love and too much butter," Mrs. Robinson said, winking. "How did your meeting go?" Marcus glanced at Destiny, who had gone back to her drawing something colorful with a lot of purple and gold. "Can we talk in the kitchen?" Mrs. Robinson followed him, her expression knowing. "That bad?" "That good, actually. And that bad." Marcus lowered his voice. "There's a whole network of people who've been documenting Victoria Sterling's behavior for years. We're meeting tonight to put everything together." "That's wonderful news." "Except Victoria already knows she's in trouble. She's working with her lawyers to create a false narrative about me, stalking mental instability, maybe even a fake history of violence." Mrs. Robinson's face hardened. "That woman is evil. She's scared." Marcus rubbed his eyes, exhaustion catching up with him. "Scared people do desperate things." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to fight anyway." He looked through the doorway at Destiny, still focused on her drawing. "I spent 5 years being invisible, letting people walk all over me because I thought it was safer. But it's not safer, it's just slower death. I won't teach my daughter that the only way to survive is to make yourself small." Mrs. Robinson reached out and squeezed his hand. "Sarah would be proud of you." The mention of his wife's name hit Marcus like a physical blow. He closed his eyes, remembering her face in those final weeks, thin and pale, but still smiling, still fighting. "She would have done this a long time ago," he said quietly. "She never could stand bullies." "Neither can you. You just forgot for a while." Mrs. Robinson patted his cheek gently. "Go get some rest before your meeting. I'll keep Destiny entertained." Marcus tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw Victoria's face twisted with rage. He heard the crack of her hand against his cheek. He felt the cold of the concrete steps as he sat outside in his janitor's uniform, waiting for someone to bring his things. 5 years. 5 years he had worked in that building, mopped those floors, emptied those trash cans. 5 years of invisibility. And in one night, everything had changed. At 6:30, Marcus put on his cleanest shirt and his good jacket, the one Sarah had bought him for job interviews that never panned out. He kissed Destiny goodbye, promised to be back before bedtime, and headed out into the cold November evening. Rosa's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a weathered brick building in Rogers Park. The hallway smelled like cooking food and old carpet, and Marcus could hear televisions murmuring behind closed doors as he climbed the stairs. Rosa answered on the first knock, pulling him inside quickly. "Good, you're early. The others aren't here yet." Her apartment was small but immaculate, every surface polished, every cushion perfectly placed. On the coffee table sat stacks of notebooks, Rosa's life's work, decades of documented injustice. "How many of those are there?" Marcus asked. 37 notebooks, 25 years. Rosa handed him a cup of coffee already prepared. "I started keeping records when I was 33 years old. A supervisor called me a dirty Mexican in front of guests, and HR told me I must have misheard." "I'm sorry." Don't be sorry. Be angry. Rosa's eyes flashed. Anger is what keeps you fighting when everything else runs out. A knock at the door interrupted them. Rosa checked the peephole, then opened it to reveal Jerome, tablet in hand, followed by a young Asian woman Marcus didn't recognize. "This is Emily Chen," Jerome said, "Victoria's executive assistant." Emily was small and precise, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses. She looked terrified. "Mr. Thompson." Her handshake was firm despite her obvious nerves. "I'm sorry for what happened to you." "Thank you. Jerome said you have information." Emily pulled a laptop from her bag, setting it on Rosa's coffee table. "I've worked for Victoria Sterling for 2 years. I've seen everything, every email, every memo, every legal threat she's made to keep people quiet." She opened the laptop and pulled up a folder of documents. "These are the NDAs. 23 of them, all from employees who experienced harassment or assault and were paid to stay silent." She clicked to another folder. "These are internal emails between Victoria and her father's old lawyer discussing how to handle problematic staff members. That's their code for minorities who complain." Marcus leaned in, scanning the documents. The language was clinical detached, as if they were discussing faulty equipment rather than human beings. "Can you prove these are real?" he asked. "Every document has metadata showing when it was created and by whom. I also have access logs showing when Victoria reviewed each file." Emily's voice strengthened as she spoke. "I've been collecting evidence for 6 months, ever since I watched her make a black executive cry in a board meeting and then laugh about it with her friends. Why didn't you come forward before?" Emily's face crumpled slightly. "I was scared. My parents sacrificed everything to give me opportunities. I have student loans, rent a career I worked so hard to build. I kept telling myself it wasn't my fight." She looked at Marcus. "But then I saw what she did to you, and I realized if I don't fight, I'm just as guilty as she is." Rosa put a hand on Emily's shoulder. "Welcome to the resistance, Misha." They spent the next 3 hours organizing everything. Rosa's notebooks covered the broadest time span, 25 years of discrimination, retaliation, and cover-ups. Jerome's footage showed recent incidents in vivid detail. Emily's documents revealed the systematic legal machinery that kept victims silent. And at the center of it all was Marcus, a living example of Victoria Sterling's cruelty captured on camera and impossible to explain away. "We need to go public," Jerome said. "Release everything at once. Flood the zone so they can't control the narrative." "No." Marcus shook his head. "If we just dump this online, they'll say it's doctored. They'll attack our credibility, dig into our backgrounds, make us look like disgruntled employees with axes to grind." "Then what do you suggest?" Marcus thought about the town hall meetings he'd attended with Sarah during her activism days. The way she had organized, built coalitions, controlled the story. "We need legitimacy. A civil rights attorney who can vouch for the evidence. Community leaders who can speak to the pattern. And we need to confront Victoria directly in a forum she can't control." Emily looked up from her laptop. "There's an all-staff meeting next week. Victoria's announcing some kind of restructuring plan. It's mandatory attendance." "Perfect." Rosa's eyes gleamed. What better place to expose a monster than in front of her own kingdom? They made plans late into the night. Emily would continue gathering documents. Jerome would compile the footage into a chronological timeline. Rosa would reach out to former employees willing to testify. And Marcus would find a lawyer. "I might know someone," he said as they were wrapping up. "My wife's college roommate. She's a civil rights attorney now. Denise Washington." "I've heard of her," Emily said, impressed. "She won that big discrimination case against the hotel chain last year." "That's her." Marcus hadn't spoken to Denise in over a year, not since Sarah's funeral, but he knew she would help. Sarah would have wanted her to. As they said their goodbyes, Rosa pulled Marcus aside. "There's something I didn't tell you earlier, about Victoria's father." "What about him?" Rosa's expression was complicated anger mixed with something like sadness. "James Sterling wasn't always like his daughter. When he first started the company, he actually cared about the workers, paid fair wages, promoted from within, treated people with respect. What changed? He got sick, cancer same as your wife, spent his last 2 years in and out of hospitals, while Victoria took over more and more of the business. Rosa shook her head. I think he knew what she was becoming. He tried to put checks in the corporate charter protections for workers' anti-discrimination clauses, but Victoria's lawyers have been finding ways around them ever since he died. Why are you telling me this? Because James Sterling put something in the investor agreement, a clause that allows the CEO to be removed if there's documented evidence of civil rights violations. Rosa's eyes met his. Victoria buried it deep, hoping no one would ever find it. But Emily did. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Are you saying? I'm saying we might not just be able to expose her, we might be able to take her down completely. The walk home was cold, but Marcus barely felt it. His mind was racing with possibilities. A network of witnesses, decades of documentation, a legal clause that could strip Victoria of her power, and at the center of it all, 3 patents worth $47 million. Patents that Marcus had created, that Victoria's company had built an empire on, that had paid for every floor he'd mopped and every humiliation he'd endured. When he got back to the apartment, Destiny was already asleep, but she'd left something on his pillow. A drawing of 2 figures, a tall man and a small girl, holding hands under a yellow sun. At the bottom, in careful crayon letters, she'd written, "My Daddy the Hero." Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, holding the drawing, tears streaming silently down his face. He thought about Sarah, about how she would have handled this. She would have fought from day one. She never would have let 5 years pass in silence. But Sarah was gone, and Marcus was still here, still fighting, still trying to be the father Destiny deserved. He folded the drawing carefully and tucked it into his wallet next to the faded photo of Sarah he'd carried since the day they met. I won't let you down, he whispered. Either of you. The next morning, Marcus called Denise Washington. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice sharp and professional. Denise Washington. Denise, it's Marcus, Marcus Thompson. A pause. Marcus. Oh my God, Marcus. It's been so long. How are you? How's Destiny? We're okay. Marcus took a breath. Actually, we're not okay. I need your help. He told her everything. The job at Sterling Industries, the patents he'd sold for nothing, the 5 years of invisibility, the slap, the humiliation, the firing, and finally the network of people who had been quietly gathering evidence for years. When he finished, Denise was silent for a long moment. Marcus, she finally said, her voice tight with controlled fury. Do you have any idea what you're sitting on? I know it's a lot. A lot. This is the biggest corporate discrimination case I've ever heard of. Decades of documented abuse, video evidence of assault, a paper trail of cover-ups, and a CEO who literally inherited her position and has been treating minority employees like garbage ever since. So you'll help? Help Marcus. I'm going to bury these people. Denise's professional composure cracked slightly. Sarah was my best friend. She used to talk about you all the time, how brilliant you were, how kind, how you deserved so much better than what life gave you. When she died, I wanted to reach out, but I didn't know what to say. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I failed you once by staying silent. I'm not going to fail you again. Denise's voice strengthened. Meet me at my office tomorrow morning. Bring everything. And Marcus. Yeah. Thank you for calling. Thank you for fighting. She paused. Sarah would be so damn proud of you. Marcus hung up the phone, his hands shaking. Another ally. Another piece of the puzzle falling into place. But even as hope built in his chest, he couldn't shake Jerome's warning. Victoria Sterling was preparing her counterattack. She had money lawyers' connections. She could make his life a living hell if she wanted to. And based on what he knew about her, she definitely wanted to. 2 days later, the first blow landed. Marcus was walking Destiny to school when his phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Mr. Thompson, a male voice, cold and professional. This is Alan Richards from Child Protective Services. We've received a report of child neglect concerning your daughter, Destiny Thompson. Marcus stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. What? An anonymous caller reported that your daughter is frequently left unsupervised and that you may be unable to provide a safe home environment. We're required to investigate all reports. That's not true. None of that is true. I understand this is upsetting Mr. Thompson. We'll need to schedule a home visit to assess the situation. Are you available Thursday at 10 a.m.? Destiny tugged on his hand. Daddy, what's wrong? Marcus forced his voice to stay calm. Nothing, baby girl, just work stuff. He scheduled the visit, hung up, and felt his whole body go cold. Victoria Sterling wasn't just fighting back. She was going for the one thing that mattered most to him: his daughter. Marcus dropped Destiny at school, forcing himself to smile, to hug her tight, to promise her everything was fine. Then he walked around the corner, leaned against a brick wall, and called Denise. She's coming after my daughter, he said, his voice breaking. She called CPS, claimed I'm neglecting Destiny. Denise cursed under her breath. That vindictive monster. Don't worry, Marcus, we'll handle this. CPS investigations are routine. As long as your home is safe and Destiny is healthy, they'll close the case. But what if they don't? What if she keeps making calls? What if she pays someone to lie? Then we document everything and add it to our lawsuit. Retaliatory harassment, abuse of government services, intimidation of a witness. Every dirty trick she pulls makes our case stronger. My daughter isn't a case, Denise. She's my whole world. I know, and we're going to protect her. Denise's voice softened. Marcus, listen to me. People like Victoria Sterling win because they count on their victims being too scared to fight back. They throw everything they have at you lawyers, money, lies, hoping you'll give up. And if you don't, they lose. It's that simple. Denise paused. Are you still willing to fight? Marcus thought about Destiny's drawing folded carefully in his wallet. My daddy the hero. Yeah, he said. I'm still willing to fight. The CPS visit came Thursday morning exactly as scheduled. Marcus had spent 2 days scrubbing the apartment until it gleamed, organizing Destiny's room, filling the refrigerator with healthy food. Mrs. Robinson came over to help tutting and fussing and making sure every surface sparkled. The caseworker was a tired-looking woman named Sandra, who walked through the apartment with a clipboard checking boxes, asking questions. Destiny sat on the couch with Mr. Whiskers watching with wide eyes. Mr. Thompson, can you tell me about your childcare arrangements when you're at work? My neighbor Mrs. Robinson watches Destiny. She's been helping us since my wife passed. Sandra made a note. And your employment status? I was recently terminated. Wrongfully terminated. I'm pursuing legal action. I see. Sandra's expression was neutral, giving nothing away. The report mentioned concerns about supervision, that Destiny is frequently left alone. That's not true. I've never left her alone. Not once. Mrs. Robinson stepped forward, her voice firm. I can vouch for that. I've known this family for 3 years. Marcus is the best father I've ever seen. He works himself to the bone for that little girl. Sandra looked at Destiny. Sweetheart, can I ask you some questions? Destiny nodded, clutching Mr. Whiskers tighter. Do you feel safe at home? Yes, ma'am. Does your daddy take good care of you? The best care. Destiny's voice was small but certain. He makes me breakfast every morning and helps me with homework and reads to me before bed. He never misses. What about when he's at work? Who watches you then? Mrs. Robinson. She's like my grandma. Destiny looked at the elderly woman with pure affection. She makes cookies and lets me watch movies. Sandra made more notes, then closed her clipboard. Mr. Thompson, everything appears to be in order here. I don't see any evidence of neglect. Marcus felt his legs go weak with relief. So the case is closed. I'll submit my report recommending closure, You should receive official notification within a week. Sandra paused at the door. Mr. Thompson. Off the record, anonymous reports like this often come from people with personal grudges. I've seen it before. If you're being harassed, you should document everything. I am, Marcus said. Believe me, I am. After Sandra left, Marcus collapsed onto the couch. Destiny immediately crawled into his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. Daddy, why was that lady asking all those questions? Someone told a lie about me, baby girl. They said I wasn't taking good care of you. Destiny's face scrunched with indignation. That's not true. You're the best daddy ever. I know, and the lady could see that. He kissed her forehead. Everything's okay now. But even as he said the words, Marcus knew they weren't true. Victoria had tried to take his daughter. She had failed this time, but she would try again. People like her always did. The phone call from Denise came an hour later. CPS closed the case, unfounded. Thank God. Denise's voice was tight with anger. But Marcus, we need to move faster. Victoria's getting desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. What's the status on the all-staff meeting? Emily says it's scheduled for Monday. Victoria's announcing some kind of restructuring plan. Perfect. That's our moment. We go public during the meeting where she can't control the narrative. Marcus hesitated. Are we ready? We're as ready as we're going to be. I've reviewed all the evidence, Rosa's notebooks, Jerome's footage, Emily's documents. It's overwhelming. Any jury in the country would convict her. This isn't going to a jury, not yet. No, but public opinion is its own kind of court. Once people see what she's really like, her board won't have a choice. They'll have to act. Marcus thought about the all-staff meeting. Hundreds of employees gathered in the main auditorium. Victoria at the podium, confident and untouchable. And him, the janitor she'd slapped and discarded, standing up to expose her in front of everyone. What if it doesn't work? He asked quietly. What if they don't believe us? They will. The footage alone is undeniable. But even if some people doubt, we'll have planted the seed. And seeds grow, Marcus. That's what they do. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus met with Denise to review the legal strategy. He rehearsed what he would say, how he would say it. Rosa coached him on staying calm under pressure. Jerome ran technical checks on the equipment they would use to display the footage. And through it all, Destiny watched with quiet understanding. Sunday night, Marcus tucked her into bed as usual. She grabbed his hand before he could leave. Daddy? Yeah, baby girl. Are you scared about tomorrow? Marcus sat on the edge of her bed, stroking her hair, a little bit. Me too. Destiny's voice was small. What if the bad lady hurts you again? She won't. I have friends helping me now. And I have you. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to remember something. Sometimes doing the right thing is scary. Sometimes it's hard. But it's always worth it. Mommy used to say that. She did. She was the bravest person I ever knew. Marcus's voice caught. I'm trying to be brave like her. Destiny reached up and touched his face, her small fingers gentle on his cheek. You are brave, Daddy. You're the bravest person I know. Marcus couldn't speak. He just held his daughter close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. Tomorrow would change everything, for better or worse. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, the sky heavy with clouds that threatened snow. Marcus dressed in his only suit, the one Sarah had bought him, and stood in front of the mirror trying to recognize himself. 5 years ago, he had been a different man. An MIT engineer with patents and promise a wife he adored, a future full of possibility. Then Sarah got sick and everything fell apart. The patents went first sold for pennies to pay for treatments that didn't work. Then the house. Then the car. Then his dignity traded piece by piece for survival. But today, he was taking it back. His phone buzzed. A text from Rosa. "We're in position. Emily has access to the presentation system. Jerome is ready with the footage. It's time." Marcus texted back, "On my way." Mrs. Robinson met him at the door, Destiny holding her hand. "You be careful," Mrs. Robinson said, her eyes fierce. "And you come back to this little girl." "I will." Destiny broke free and ran to him, hugging his legs tight. "Good luck, Daddy. I love you." "I love you too, baby girl. More than anything in the world." He walked out into the cold morning, Rosa's worn notebook in his jacket pocket, Derek's USB drive in the other. The weight of them felt significant, decades of injustice finally about to see the light. The Sterling Industries building loomed ahead, its glass facade gleaming against the gray sky. Marcus had spent 5 years entering through the service entrance, invisible and ignored. Today he walked through the main doors. The security guard at the front desk looked up, then did a double take. "Sir, can I help you? I'm here for the all-staff meeting." "Do you have an employee badge?" Marcus smiled. "I used to." Before the guard could respond, Jerome appeared wearing his security uniform. "He's with me," cleared visitor. The guard hesitated, then nodded. "Go ahead." As they walked toward the auditorium, Jerome spoke in a low voice. "Victoria's already inside. She looks confident, has no idea what's coming." "Where are the others?" "Rosa's in the back near the AV controls. Emily's backstage with the presentation laptop. Denise is outside with the press." Marcus stopped. "Press?" "Denise called them this morning. Said there would be a major announcement regarding discrimination at Sterling Industries." Jerome grinned. "By the time Victoria realizes what's happening, the whole world will be watching." They entered the auditorium through a side door. Hundreds of employees filled the seats, their murmurs creating a low hum of anticipation. On the stage, Victoria Sterling stood at the podium, reviewing notes, looking every inch the powerful CEO. Marcus found a seat in the back near the aisle. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Victoria tapped the microphone and the room fell silent. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here." Her voice was smooth, confident. "I know there have been some rumors circulating about changes at Sterling Industries. Today, I want to address those rumors directly." She clicked to the first slide, a corporate logo professionally designed. "As many of you know, we've been evaluating our operational efficiency. After careful analysis, I'm announcing a comprehensive restructuring plan called Operation Clean Sweep." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Marcus saw janitors and maintenance workers exchange worried glances. "This plan will modernize our facilities management by transitioning to contracted services. It's a cost-effective solution that will allow us to focus on our core business." She clicked to the next slide showing projected savings. "The transition will affect approximately 120 support staff positions." The murmurs grew louder. Someone in the back shouted, "You're firing us." "We're not firing anyone," Victoria said smoothly. "We're offering generous severance packages and transition assistance. This is simply the evolution of our business model." Marcus felt anger building in his chest. She was eliminating the entire cleaning staff, people like Rosa, who had given decades to this company, and she was presenting it like a business innovation. He caught Rosa's eye across the room. She nodded once. It was time. Marcus stood up. "Ms. Sterling." Every head turned. Victoria's eyes found him in the crowd, and for a moment, her composure flickered. "Excuse me, this is a closed meeting. Security. I have a question about the restructuring plan." Marcus's voice was steady, carrying through the room. "Will the contracted workers receive the same protections as current employees? Will they have the same rights to file complaints if they're mistreated?" Victoria's smile tightened. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're not an employee of this company." "I was. until you slapped me in the face and fired me for refusing to kneel." Gasps rippled through the audience. Phones came out recording. "That's a lie." Victoria's voice rose. "Security remove this man immediately." "Before they do," Marcus said, not moving, "maybe you should show everyone what really happened that night." "Jerome." The main screen flickered. Victoria's carefully prepared presentation disappeared, replaced by security footage. The lobby, Marcus mopping. Victoria stumbling out of the elevator, clearly intoxicated. The room went silent as they watched. Victoria's slurred insults. Her demand that Marcus kneel. His quiet refusal. And then the slap. The crack of her hand against his face echoed through the auditorium's speakers. Victoria grabbed the microphone. "This footage is doctored. It's a fake." "There are timestamps," Jerome called out from his position near the AV controls. "Metadata proving it's authentic, taken from the company's own security system." "Here's another one." Rosa's voice rang out as she stepped into the aisle holding up her phone. 3 months ago, Maria Santos cleaning lady for 12 years. New footage appeared on screen. Victoria throwing a coffee cup at a small Latina woman, striking her in the face. Maria's cry of pain. Victoria's laugh. "And another." Rosa scrolled to the next video. James Chen, maintenance worker, called a chink and told to go back where he came from. The footage played. Victoria's casual cruelty captured in high definition. Employees were standing now, their faces shifting from shock to anger. Some were crying, others were shouting. The auditorium was descending into chaos. Victoria screamed into the microphone. "These are lies, all lies. This man is mentally unstable. He's been stalking me. Actually, Ms. Sterling, I have documentation proving otherwise." A new voice cut through the noise. Emily Chen stepped out from backstage, laptop in hand, her face pale but determined. "I've worked as your executive assistant for 2 years. I've seen everything. Every email, every memo, every cover-up." Emily's voice shook but didn't break. "I have 23 non-disclosure agreements from employees you harassed and paid to stay silent. I have internal communications discussing how to handle problematic staff members. I have records of the legal fees you've spent burying complaints." She connected her laptop to the display system. Documents began scrolling across the screen. NDAs, emails, settlement agreements. A paper trail of systematic abuse. Victoria's face went white. "Emily, what are you doing? I'll destroy you. I'll make sure you never work again." "That's what you told Maria Santos, and James Chen, and everyone else who tried to speak up." Emily's voice strengthened. "But I'm done being scared of you." Marcus stepped into the aisle, walking toward the stage. "You've spent years making people feel worthless, invisible. You hit me because you couldn't stand that I wouldn't kneel. You tried to take my daughter because I wouldn't stay quiet." "Your daughter?" Victoria laughed high and desperate. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The anonymous CPS report. Filed 2 days after you fired me." Marcus was close to the stage now, close enough to see the fear in her eyes. "Claiming I neglect my child, the same child who lost her mother to cancer 18 months ago." The murmurs in the audience turned to angry shouts. Parents who understood, workers who had been threatened, people who recognized the tactics of a bully. "There's something else everyone should know." Marcus's voice dropped, but the microphone carried it clearly. 5 years ago, Victoria Sterling's father bought 3 patents from a desperate engineer. Patents that revolutionized this company's core technology. Patents worth $47 million. He paused, letting the weight of the moment build. He paid $50,000 for them. The engineer needed the money for his wife's cancer treatment. He didn't have time to negotiate. He just needed to save her. Victoria started to speak, but Marcus cut her off. "That engineer was me. The Thompson patents, the ones that power your most profitable division, I created them. Every dollar this company has made in the last 5 years came from my work. And for 5 years, I mopped your floors and emptied your trash and let you treat me like I was nothing." The room exploded, employees shouting, crying, demanding answers. Security guards looked at each other, uncertain what to do. On stage, Victoria stood frozen, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Marcus climbed the steps to the stage, standing face to face with the woman who had slapped him, humiliated him, tried to destroy him. "You called me worthless," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "You said I was just a janitor. That's all I'd ever be." He straightened his tie, Sarah's tie, the one she'd bought him for a better future. "You were wrong." The auditorium doors burst open. Denise Washington strode in, flanked by camera crews and reporters. Behind her came uniformed police officers. "Victoria Sterling." Denise's voice was clear and commanding. "I'm here on behalf of my client Marcus Thompson and the dozens of employees you've harassed, assaulted, and intimidated over the past decade." Victoria stumbled backward. "You can't do this. This is my company. My father built this." "Your father also put a civil rights clause in the corporate charter," Denise interrupted. "Article 7, Section 12. It allows for the removal of any executive found complicit in discriminatory practices. Emily found it buried in the legal archives." She held up a document. "I've already filed an emergency petition with the board. Given the evidence presented today, which is now being broadcast live, by the way, I expect they'll be scheduling a vote very soon." Victoria's head whipped toward the camera crews. Her face went from white to red to something close to purple. "You can't broadcast this. I'll sue every one of you." "Actually, the building is private property owned by Sterling Industries shareholders," Denise said calmly. "And the shareholders have been notified. Several of them are watching right now, including your father's old partners who never approved of how you've been running things." As if on cue, Victoria's phone began buzzing, then ringing, then buzzing again. "That's probably the board," Denise said. "I'd answer if I were you." One of the police officers stepped forward. "Victoria Sterling, you're under arrest for assault and battery. You have the right to remain silent." "Assault on who?" "Marcus Thompson. The incident was captured on security footage that was submitted to the district attorney's office this morning." Victoria's lawyer, a sweaty man in an expensive suit who had materialized from somewhere, pushed forward. "This is outrageous. Ms. Sterling is a prominent businesswoman. You can't just arrest her in front of—" "We can and we are." The officer pulled out handcuffs. "Ma'am, please turn around." The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound Marcus had ever heard. Victoria's wrists, always adorned with designer bracelets and expensive watches, now circled with cold steel. She turned to look at Marcus as they led her toward the door. Her face was twisted with rage and disbelief. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "This isn't over. My family will destroy you. We have lawyers' connections, money." "You have evidence against you," Marcus said quietly. 25 years of it." The officers led Victoria out of the auditorium. Cameras followed, capturing every step. Denise was already on the phone with someone, the board probably, or another media outlet. Marcus stood on the stage looking out at the crowd of employees. Some were cheering. Others were crying. A few looked lost, uncertain what came next. Rosa made her way to the stage, her limp barely slowing her down. She took Marcus's hand and held it up like a boxing champion.
25 years,
she said, her voice breaking.
25 years I waited for this day.
Marcus felt tears on his cheeks. He hadn't even realized he was crying. Emily joined them on stage, then Jerome. The four of them stood together, a janitor, a cleaning lady, a security guard, and an executive assistant. The invisible people who had finally made themselves seen. In the back of the room, someone started clapping. Then another person. Then another. Soon the whole auditorium was on its feet, applauding, crying, releasing years of pent-up frustration and fear. Marcus thought about Destiny waiting at home with Mrs. Robinson. He thought about Sarah, who had fought every battle with fierce determination. He thought about his mother, who had cleaned offices her whole life and never complained. He pulled out his phone and texted Mrs. Robinson, Tell Destiny her daddy won. The response came immediately. She says she knew you would. Outside the building, snow had started to fall. Marcus watched through the auditorium windows as Victoria Sterling was loaded into a police car, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. Her perfect hair was coming undone. Her designer coat was wrinkled. She looked for the first time like exactly what she was, just a bully who had finally met someone who wouldn't back down. Denise appeared at Marcus's side. The board is calling an emergency meeting for tomorrow. 3 major shareholders have already announced they're supporting your civil lawsuit. What happens now? Now, Denise smiled. Now we finish what we started. Criminal charges for Victoria. Civil suit for damages. And if everything goes well, a complete restructuring of how this company treats its workers. Marcus looked around the auditorium at the employees still processing what had happened. Rosa was surrounded by cleaning staff, hugging them, crying with them. Jerome was showing his footage to a group of young security guards. Emily was being interviewed by a reporter, her voice steady and clear. "What about the patents?" Marcus asked. "That's the best part." Denise's smile widened. "I had my team research the original sale agreement. James Sterling's lawyers cut corners. They didn't properly document the transfer of intellectual property rights. There's a case to be made that you never legally sold the patents at all." Marcus stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means we might be able to get them back, or at minimum negotiate a fair compensation for their use over the past 5 years. We're talking tens of millions of dollars, Marcus." The number didn't register. It was too big, too impossible. For 5 years he'd been scraping by, working double shifts, counting pennies. And now someone was telling him he might be rich. "I don't care about the money," he said. "Then care about what you can do with it." Denise put a hand on his shoulder. "Think about Destiny. Think about all the people like you who sold their ideas for nothing because they were desperate. You could help them, Marcus. You could change things." He thought about his mother again, about Rosa's 35 years of invisibility, about all the workers who had been pushed down and paid off and told to stay quiet. "Yeah," he said finally. "Maybe I could." The snow was falling harder now, blanketing the city in white. Through the windows, Marcus could see the police car pulling away, taking Victoria Sterling to face consequences she had never imagined. His phone rang. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Thompson?" A man's voice, elderly, slightly trembling. "This is William Sterling, Victoria's uncle. James was my brother." Marcus tensed. "What do you want?" "I want to apologize." The old man's voice cracked. "I watched that broadcast. I saw what my niece has become. I saw how she treated you and everyone else." A long pause. "I also remember when James bought your patents. He talked about you, said you were brilliant, said he wished he could have paid you what they were worth." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because my brother wasn't always a good man, but he tried to do the right thing at the end. The civil rights clause in the charter, that was his idea. He knew Victoria would be trouble. He tried to put safeguards in place." William Sterling sighed heavily. "I should have done more. I should have stopped her years ago. I'm sorry." Marcus didn't know what to say. The apology felt genuine, but it came years too late. "Thank you," he finally said, "for calling." "There's more. James left instructions in his will about the patents, instructions that Victoria buried. I'm going to make sure those instructions are followed." The old man's voice strengthened slightly. "You're going to get what you deserve, Mr. Thompson. I'll make sure of it." The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone, staring at it like it might explode. "Who was that?" Denise asked. "Victoria's uncle. He says he's going to help us." Denise's eyebrows rose. "The family is turning on her." "Looks like it." "Then she's finished." Denise shook her head in wonder. "You know, when you called me last week, I thought this would be a hard fight. Years of litigation, appeals, corporate lawyers dragging everything out. But this Victoria imploding on live television, the family abandoning her evidence, falling into our laps." She laughed. "Sometimes the universe just decides someone's time is up. Marcus looked out at the snow falling on Chicago. Somewhere in this city, his daughter was waiting for him to come home. Somewhere Victoria Sterling was sitting in a police station realizing her empire had crumbled. And somewhere Sarah was watching finally at peace. "I need to go," he said. "Destiny's waiting." "Go." Denise squeezed his arm. "Go be with your daughter. We'll handle the rest." Marcus walked out of Sterling Industries for the second time in a week. But this time, he walked through the front door with his head held high. This time, people moved out of his way with respect instead of contempt. This time, security guards nodded at him instead of escorting him out. The snow crunched under his feet as he headed for the bus stop. His suit was getting wet, but he didn't care. For the first time in 5 years, Marcus Thompson felt like himself again. Not a janitor, not a victim, not invisible. Just a father going home to his daughter. The bus ride home felt different. Marcus sat in the same cracked vinyl seat he'd occupied hundreds of times before, watching the same gray Chicago streets slide past the fogged windows. But everything had changed. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing messages from numbers he didn't recognize, news alerts with his name in the headlines, voicemails from reporters wanting interviews. He turned the phone off and closed his eyes. When he reached Mrs. Robinson's building, Destiny was already at the window, her face pressed against the glass. The moment she saw him, she disappeared, and by the time he reached the front door, she was barreling down the hallway toward him. "Daddy!" He caught her in his arms, lifting her off the ground, holding her so tight he could feel her heartbeat against his chest. "Mrs. Robinson showed me the news." Destiny said her words tumbling out in a rush. "She said you were on TV. She said the bad lady got arrested. She said you're a hero." "I'm not a hero, baby girl." "Yes, you are." Destiny pulled back to look at his face, her expression fierce. "You stood up to the bully. That's what heroes do." Marcus carried her inside where Mrs. Robinson was waiting with tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "I watched the whole thing," she said, pulling him into a hug the moment he set Destiny down. "I've never been so proud of anyone in my entire life. I couldn't have done it without you, without everyone." "Nonsense. You did the hard part." Mrs. Robinson wiped her eyes with her apron. "Now sit down. I made soup, and you're going to eat every drop." They sat around Mrs. Robinson's small kitchen table, Marcus, Destiny, and the woman who had become their family when they had no one else. The soup was warm and salty, and for the first time in days, Marcus realized how hungry he was. "What happens now, Daddy?" Destiny asked, spooning noodles into her mouth. "A lot of meetings, a lot of paperwork." He reached over and wiped a drop of broth from her chin. "But the important part is over. The truth is out. Is the bad lady going to jail? Maybe. That's for the courts to decide." Destiny nodded solemnly, processing this with the gravity only a child could bring to adult problems. "Good. She deserves it for hitting you." After dinner, Marcus carried a sleepy Destiny back to their apartment, tucked her into bed, and sat in the darkness of the living room, finally allowing himself to feel the weight of what had happened. His phone sat on the coffee table, still off. He knew the moment he turned it on, the world would rush back in lawyers and reporters and decisions that would shape the rest of his life. But for now, in this quiet moment, he just wanted to breathe. Sarah's photo watched him from the bookshelf. He got up and took it in his hands, studying her smile, remembering the way she used to look at him when he talked about his inventions. "I did it," he whispered. "I finally did it." The photo didn't answer, but Marcus could almost feel her presence, warm and proud, filling the empty spaces of the apartment. He fell asleep on the couch, still holding the photo, and dreamed of nothing at all. The next morning came too fast. Marcus woke to pounding on his apartment door, disoriented and stiff from sleeping on the lumpy cushions. "Marcus, open up." He stumbled to the door and found Denise standing in the hallway, her briefcase in one hand, 2 cups of coffee in the other. "Get dressed. We have a board meeting in 2 hours." "Board meeting? I'm not on the board." "You're the star witness." Denise pushed past him into the apartment. The shareholders called an emergency session last night. They're voting on Victoria's removal today, and they want you there. Marcus rubbed his eyes. What about Destiny? I can't leave her alone. Mrs. Robinson is already on her way up. I called her from the car. Denise thrust a coffee into his hands. Drink this, shower, put on your good suit. We have work to do. 20 minutes later, Marcus was in Denise's car speeding toward downtown Chicago. His hair was still damp, his tie hastily knotted, but his mind was sharp. What should I expect? Hostility from some, support from others. Denise navigated through traffic with aggressive precision. Victoria still has allies on the board. People who benefited from her leadership, who looked the other way when she mistreated employees. They'll try to minimize what happened, paint it as an isolated incident. It wasn't isolated. We have 25 years of documentation. Exactly. That's why you're going to speak. Denise glanced at him. Tell them what you told everyone yesterday. Tell them about the patents, about working in the building that made millions from your ideas. Tell them about Destiny and Sarah and what Victoria tried to do to your family. You want me to make them feel guilty? I want you to make them feel human. Denise's voice softened. Most of those people aren't monsters, Marcus. They're just scared. They've spent years protecting their positions, their bonuses, their comfortable lives. You need to remind them that being comfortable isn't the same as being right. The Sterling Industries boardroom was on the 42nd floor, higher than Marcus had ever been in the building. The walls were paneled in dark wood, the carpet thick enough to swallow footsteps. Around a massive table sat a dozen people in expensive suits, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and anxiety. At the head of the table sat William Sterling, Victoria's uncle. His face was deeply lined, his hair white and thin, but his eyes were sharp. Mr. Thompson. He rose to shake Marcus's hand. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. The other board members watched this exchange with varying degrees of discomfort. Marcus recognized some of them from company photos, executives who had walked past him 1,000 times without ever seeing him. Let's begin, William said, returning to his seat. We're here to discuss the future of Sterling Industries in light of recent events. As you all know, my niece Victoria has been arrested on charges of assault. Additionally, substantial evidence has emerged of systematic discrimination under her leadership. A man across the table, 50s red-faced, combative, interrupted. This is all highly exaggerated. One slap, one bad decision, and suddenly we're throwing away 15 years of growth. One slap. Denise stepped forward. Mr. Hargrove, we have documentation of over 300 discriminatory incidents spanning 2 decades. We have video evidence of multiple assaults. We have 23 non-disclosure agreements with employees who were paid to stay silent about harassment. All of which could be fabricated. The footage came from your own security system, Denise cut in. The NDAs were drafted by your own legal department. The documentation was kept by employees who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by speaking up. Hargrove's face reddened further. This company has obligations to its shareholders. We can't make major leadership changes based on emotional appeals from a disgruntled former employee. William Sterling raised a hand. Mr. Thompson isn't a disgruntled employee, Richard. He's the inventor of the Thompson patents, the foundation of our most profitable division. Silence fell over the room. Several board members exchanged shocked glances. That's right, William continued. The patents that generate 40% of our annual revenue were created by the man my niece slapped and fired for refusing to kneel before her. He looked around the table. I've spent the last 12 hours reviewing my brother's old files. James knew he underpaid for those patents. He felt guilty about it until the day he died. James Sterling was a businessman. Hargrove protested. He made a legal purchase. He exploited a desperate man whose wife was dying of cancer. William's voice was quiet but heavy with shame. And then his daughter spent 5 years making that same man mop her floors. If that's the kind of company we are, I don't want any part of it. Another board member, a woman Marcus didn't recognize, leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, may I ask you something? Of course. Why did you stay? After everything that happened, why did you keep working here? Marcus thought about the question. He'd asked himself the same thing 1,000 times. Because I have a daughter, he said finally. 8 years old. Her mother died 18 months ago. I needed a job, any job that would let me keep a roof over her head and food on the table. Pride doesn't pay bills. The woman nodded slowly. And if you had the chance to do it over, if you could go back to the day you sold those patents, I'd do the same thing. Marcus's voice was steady. The patents were just ideas. Sarah was real. Destiny is real. I'd trade every dollar in the world to have had more time with my wife. The room was silent. Even Hargrove had stopped glaring. But that doesn't mean what happened to me was right, Marcus continued. It doesn't mean Victoria Sterling should get away with treating people like garbage because her father built a company. The janitors and cleaning staff and security guards, they're not invisible. They're not worthless. They deserve to be treated with dignity. He reached into his pocket and pulled out Rosa's notebook, worn and weathered, filled with 25 years of careful handwriting. Rosa Martinez kept this for a quarter century. Every incident, every slur, every time someone was pushed down and told to stay quiet. She did it because she believed that someday someone would care enough to listen. Marcus set the notebook on the table. Today is that day. You can be the people who finally listen, or you can be the people who kept looking away. The vote took less than an hour. Victoria Sterling was removed as CEO effective immediately. Her voting shares were suspended pending the outcome of criminal proceedings. A special committee was formed to investigate discriminatory practices and compensate affected employees. And Marcus Thompson was asked to consult on the company's new diversity initiatives, a request he accepted on one condition. Rosa Martinez becomes the head of the program, he said. She's been fighting this battle longer than anyone. She deserves to lead it. William Sterling agreed without hesitation. Outside the boardroom, Denise grabbed Marcus in a fierce hug. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, all of us. Don't be modest. You stood in a room full of people who have more money than God, and you made them feel ashamed of themselves. Denise laughed, wiping tears from her eyes. Sarah would have loved every second of that. The mention of his wife's name hit Marcus like it always did, a sweet ache in his chest. Yeah, he said softly. She would have. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings and media appearances. Victoria's criminal trial was scheduled for spring, but she was denied bail after prosecutors argued she was a flight risk. The footage of her arrest handcuffed in her designer coat. Her face contorted with rage had gone viral, viewed over 50 million times. Marcus did a few interviews carefully chosen by Denise to maximize impact. He talked about the patents, about Sarah, about destiny. He talked about being invisible and finally finding his voice. Each interview brought more support, more allies, more people sharing their own stories of workplace discrimination. Rosa's appointment as Director of Workplace Dignity made national news. At 73 years old, she became the oldest C-suite executive in Sterling Industries history. Her first act was to rehire every janitor and cleaning staff member who had been laid off under Operation Clean Sweep, with back pay and a formal apology. This is just the beginning, she told Marcus over coffee one morning. We're going to change everything. Training programs, reporting systems, real consequences for bad behavior. No more sweeping things under the rug. You've been waiting a long time for this. 25 years. Rosa smiled, her weathered face softening. But you know what? It was worth every day. Emily Chen left Sterling Industries to start her own consulting firm, helping companies implement whistleblower protections. Jerome was promoted to head of security, with a mandate to protect employees from harassment instead of covering it up. And Marcus went home to his daughter. The settlement came through in February, 3 months after the all-staff meeting that had changed everything. Denise called him with the news while he was making Destiny's breakfast. Sit down, Marcus. I'm making pancakes. Just tell me. $27 million. Marcus dropped the spatula. Batter splattered across the stove. What? The board agreed to fair compensation for the patents, plus damages for wrongful termination and emotional distress. $27 million minus legal fees. Denise's voice was trembling with excitement. You're rich, Marcus. Actually, genuinely rich. He leaned against the counter, his legs suddenly weak. I don't understand. I thought we'd have to fight for years. So did I. But William Sterling pushed for a quick settlement. He said it was what his brother would have wanted. Denise paused. There's more. The settlement includes a formal apology from the company, a scholarship fund in Sarah's name, and a permanent seat on the board's ethics committee. Marcus couldn't speak. The number was too big, too abstract. For 5 years he'd been counting pennies, skipping meals, so Destiny could eat working double shifts to keep the lights on. And now someone was telling him he'd never have to worry about money again. Daddy? Destiny's voice came from behind him. The pancakes are burning. He spun around, saw smoke rising from the griddle, and burst out laughing, a wild, uncontrolled sound that didn't stop until tears were streaming down his face. Daddy, what's wrong? Destiny rushed to his side, her eyes wide with concern. Why are you crying? I'm not sad, baby girl. He knelt down and pulled her into his arms. I'm happy. I'm so happy. But you're crying. Sometimes people cry when they're happy, especially when something good happens that they never expected. Destiny considered this with her usual gravity. Did something good happen? Something very good. Marcus wiped his eyes, looking at his daughter's face, so much like Sarah's, so full of trust and love. Remember when I told you I invented some things a long time ago? Things that I had to sell when Mommy got sick. The patents. You explained them to me. Right. Well, the company that bought them, they've decided to pay me what they were really worth. A lot of money, Destiny. Enough that we don't have to worry anymore. Her eyes went wide. You mean we're rich? I mean we're okay. More than okay. He tucked a braid behind her ear. It means I can be home more. It means you can go to any school you want. It means we can have a real house with a yard, maybe even a dog. A dog? Destiny's face lit up. Can we really get a dog? If you want one. She threw her arms around his neck, squeezing so hard he could barely breathe. This is the best day ever. Marcus held her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling her small heart beating against his chest. He thought about all the nights he'd lain awake terrified of losing her, terrified of failing her. He thought about the CPS visit, the anonymous report, Victoria's attempt to take the one thing that mattered most. It really is, he said softly. It really is. The criminal trial began in April. Marcus sat in the gallery every day, watching as prosecutors laid out the case against Victoria Sterling. The footage was played again and again, the slaps, the humiliation, the lies. Witnesses testified about years of abuse. Emily presented her documents. Jerome explained how he'd saved the security footage. Victoria's lawyers tried everything. They claimed the footage was doctored. They painted Marcus as a stalker, a con man, a delusional former employee with a grudge. They brought in character witnesses who praised Victoria's leadership and charitable works. None of it worked. On the fourth day of testimony, Rosa Martinez took the stand. She was wearing a new suit, the first she'd ever owned, and her gray hair was neatly styled. But her eyes were the same as always, fierce, determined, unafraid. Mrs. Martinez, the prosecutor began. How long did you work at Sterling Industries? 35 years. And during that time did you witness discriminatory behavior by Victoria Sterling? Yes. Can you describe what you witnessed? Rosa opened her mouth to speak, then stopped. She looked across the courtroom at Victoria, who sat at the defense table in a subdued gray dress, her face carefully blank. I watched her call people names that I won't repeat in this courtroom. Rosa said, her voice steady. I watched her throw things at workers who made small mistakes. I watched her make a pregnant woman cry until she miscarried from the stress. Gasps rippled through the gallery. The judge called for order. I watched her pay people to stay quiet, Rosa continued. I watched her fire anyone who complained. I watched her treat human beings like they were garbage day after day, year after year. Her voice broke slightly. And I watched everyone look the other way because they were scared of her. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Rosa's eyes glistened with tears. Because I was scared too. I had bills to pay, a family to support. I told myself it wasn't my fight, that someone else would fix it. She looked at Marcus in the gallery. Then I met a man who refused to kneel, a man who stood up even though he had everything to lose. He reminded me that staying quiet isn't the same as staying safe. The prosecutor nodded. No further questions. Victoria's lawyer rose for cross-examination. Mrs. Martinez, isn't it true that you harbor personal resentment toward Ms. Sterling? I harbor resentment toward cruelty. But specifically toward Ms. Sterling. Didn't she deny your request for a promotion in 2018? She denied my request because she said Mexicans weren't management material. I have it in writing. The lawyer's face went pale. I have no further questions. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon in May. Marcus sat in the gallery with Destiny on one side and Mrs. Robinson on the other. Rosa was behind him, along with Jerome and Emily and dozens of other workers who had found the courage to speak up. On the charge of assault in the first degree, how does the jury find guilty? On the charge of tampering with evidence, guilty. On the charge of witness intimidation, guilty. Each word landed like a hammer blow. Victoria Sterling, once untouchable, once powerful beyond imagining, sat motionless as her future crumbled around her. Marcus watched her face as the verdicts were read. He expected to feel triumph, satisfaction, vindication. Instead, he felt something closer to sadness. Victoria had everything: money, power, opportunity, and she'd chosen to use it for cruelty. She'd had every chance to be better, and she'd thrown them all away. What a waste, he thought. What a terrible waste. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. Victoria was given 8 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 5. As she was led away in handcuffs, she finally looked at Marcus, really looked at him for the first time since that night in the lobby. I hope you're happy, she said, her voice cracking. You destroyed my life. Marcus stood up slowly. The courtroom fell silent. No, he said quietly. You destroyed your own life. I just refuse to let you destroy mine. Victoria opened her mouth to respond, but the guards were already pulling her toward the door. The last Marcus saw of her was her back disappearing into the hallway, her shoulders slumped, her designer shoes shuffling against the courthouse floor. It was over. Outside the courthouse, the May sunshine was warm on Marcus's face. Destiny held his hand squinting against the light while reporters shouted questions from behind a barrier. Mr. Thompson, how do you feel about the verdict? Mr. Thompson, what's next for you? Mr. Thompson, do you have any message for Victoria Sterling? He ignored them all, guiding Destiny toward the car where Denise was waiting. But at the last moment, he stopped and turned around. I have one thing to say, he announced, and the crowd fell silent. What happened to me happens to thousands of people every day. Workers who are humiliated, harassed, treated like they don't matter. Most of them never get justice. Most of them never even get heard. He looked down at Destiny, then back at the cameras. But things can change. They have to change. Every person deserves to be treated with dignity, no matter what job they have, no matter what they look like, no matter who their family is. That's what this was really about. Not revenge, not money, just basic human dignity. He squeezed Destiny's hand. That's all I have to say. They got into the car and drove away, leaving the reporters and the courthouse and the past behind them. Destiny leaned against his shoulder, tired from the long day. Daddy? Yeah, baby girl? What does dignity mean? Marcus thought about the question. He thought about Rosa's notebooks, and Jerome's courage, and Emily's sacrifice. He thought about Mrs. Robinson's kindness, and Sarah's love, and Destiny's unwavering faith. "It means being treated like you matter," he said finally. "It means being seen for who you really are, not what people assume about you. It means standing up for yourself even when it's hard." Destiny nodded slowly, processing this. "Like what you did. Like what we all did. Together." She was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "I think Mommy would be proud of you." Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. "I think so too, baby girl. I think so too." 6 months after the verdict, Marcus stood in front of a building he never thought he'd own. The Thompson Community Center rose 3 stories high on the south side of Chicago, its red brick facade gleaming in the autumn sunshine. Workers were putting the finishing touches on the entrance where bronze letters spelled out the name that still made his heart catch, the Sarah Thompson Center for Working Families. Destiny tugged at his hand. "Daddy, is this really ours?" "It's not ours, baby girl. It belongs to everyone who needs it." He knelt down to her level. "But your mommy's name is on it. That means a part of her will always be here helping people." She would have liked that. She would have loved it. The center had been Destiny's idea in a way. 3 months after the settlement, Marcus had asked her what they should do with all the money. He'd expected her to say Disney World or a swimming pool or a puppy, things any 9-year-old would want. Instead, she'd looked at him with Sarah's eyes and said, "We should help people like us. People who are sad and scared and don't have anyone." So that's what they did. The Sarah Thompson Center would provide free childcare for working parents, job training programs, legal aid for discrimination cases, and counseling services for families dealing with illness and loss. Rosa had helped design the programs, drawing on her decades of experience watching workers struggle without support. Denise had set up a legal clinic. Even Jerome had gotten involved teaching self-defense classes for employees facing workplace harassment. "Mr. Thompson." Marcus turned to find a young black woman approaching, clipboard in hand. Her name tag read, "Coordinator, Maria." "The press is here for the ribbon cutting, and there's someone who wants to speak with you first." "Who?" Maria hesitated. "She says her name is Catherine Sterling, Victoria's mother." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He hadn't seen any of the Sterling family since William had testified at Victoria's sentencing. Catherine had been conspicuously absent throughout the trial, hiding the gossip columns, said from the shame of what her daughter had become. "Tell her I'll be there in a minute." He looked down at Destiny. "Baby girl, why don't you go find Mrs. Robinson? She's inside setting up the refreshments." "Is something wrong?" "No, I just need to talk to someone." Destiny studied his face with that uncanny perception she'd inherited from Sarah. "The bad lady's mom." "How did you know that?" "I heard Maria say Sterling." Destiny squeezed his hand. "It's okay, Daddy. You can handle it. You can handle anything." She ran off toward the building, braids bouncing, and Marcus felt a surge of love so fierce it nearly knocked him over. 9 years old, and already braver than most adults he knew. He found Catherine Sterling waiting in the small garden they'd planted beside the center, a memorial garden with a bench dedicated to Sarah's memory. She was older than he expected, her face lined with grief that went deeper than makeup could hide. She wore a simple black dress, no jewelry, nothing like the glamorous photos he'd seen in society magazines. "Mr. Thompson." Her voice was hoarse, as if she'd been crying. "Thank you for seeing me." "Mrs. Sterling." "Please, call me Catherine." She gestured to the bench. "May I sit?" They sat in silence for a moment, the autumn breeze rustling through the garden. Marcus could hear laughter from inside the center staff, and volunteers getting ready for the opening ceremony. "I don't know why I'm here," Catherine finally said. "I've written this speech in my head 100 times, and now that I'm sitting next to you, I can't remember any of it." "You don't have to make a speech." "Yes, I do. I owe you that much." She took a shaky breath. "I raised Victoria. I watched her become what she became, and I did nothing to stop it. When James died, I told myself she was just grieving that she'd get better. But she didn't get better. She got worse, and I kept making excuses." Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say. "When I saw the footage, what she did to you, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe my daughter was capable of that kind of cruelty." Catherine's voice broke. "But then I thought about all the little signs over the years. The way she talked about the staff. The way she treated people she thought were beneath her. I should have seen it. I should have done something." "Why didn't you?" "Because I was comfortable." The word came out bitter self-loathing. "I had my charities and my garden clubs and my beautiful house. I didn't want to look too closely at where the money came from or what my daughter was doing with it. I told myself it wasn't my business." She turned to face him, her eyes red-rimmed. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry for what Victoria did to you, for what my family took from you, for all of it." Marcus looked at this broken woman, mother of the person who had humiliated him, slapped him, tried to destroy his family. He thought about the rage he'd carried for so long, the nights he'd lain awake imagining revenge. But sitting here now in a garden dedicated to his wife's memory, he couldn't find that rage anymore. It had been replaced by something else, not forgiveness exactly, but something close to it. Understanding maybe, or just exhaustion. "Your daughter made her own choices," he said finally. "You're responsible for how you raised her, but she's responsible for what she did." "That doesn't make me feel better. It's not supposed to." Marcus stood up, looking down at her. "But maybe you can do something with that guilt, something useful." "Like what?" "Like making sure it doesn't happen again. Your family still has influence, connections, money. Use it. Fund programs that teach kids about empathy and respect. Support organizations that fight workplace discrimination. Be the person you wish you'd been when Victoria was growing up." Catherine stared at him. "You're asking me to help you?" "I'm asking you to help everyone. Victoria wasn't born cruel. Something made her that way, entitlement, privilege, never being told no. Your family can either keep producing people like her, or you can break the cycle." For a long moment, Catherine didn't respond. Then slowly she nodded. "William said you were remarkable. I didn't believe him." She rose from the bench, smoothing her dress. "I'll do what you suggested. I'll find a way to make this right." "You can't make it right. You can only make it better." "Then that's what I'll do." Catherine extended her hand. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for your time, and for your mercy." Marcus shook her hand, a brief formal gesture. Then he watched her walk away through the garden, a small figure disappearing into the autumn sunlight. He sat back down on the bench, running his fingers over the bronze plaque in loving memory of Sarah Thompson. Beloved wife, mother and fighter for justice. "What do you think?" he whispered. "Did I do the right thing?" The wind rustled through the memorial garden, carrying the scent of the flowers they'd planted, Sarah's favorites, purple and gold. Marcus chose to believe that was her answer. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew a crowd of over 500 people. Local politicians, community leaders, workers from Sterling Industries, and families who would benefit from the center's programs all gathered on the front steps. News cameras lined the street. Reporters shouted questions that went unanswered. Marcus stood at the podium, Destiny beside him, looking out at the faces of people who believed in what they'd built. "1 year ago," he began, his voice carrying over the crowd, "I was invisible. I mopped floors and emptied trash cans and let people treat me like I didn't matter. I told myself it was the only way to survive." He paused, gathering his thoughts. But survival isn't the same as living. And invisibility isn't the same as safety. Sometimes the safest thing you can do is stand up and be seen. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. "This center is named after my wife, Sarah. She died 2 years ago, but she taught me everything I know about courage. She used to say that the only way to fight darkness is to shine a light so bright it can't be ignored." Marcus looked down at Destiny, who smiled up at him with complete trust. "That's what this place is. A light. For every worker who's been humiliated and told to stay quiet. For every parent who's struggling to keep their family together. For every person who's been made to feel like they don't matter. His voice strengthened. You matter. You always mattered. And now you have a place where people will see you, hear you, and fight for you. He picked up the oversized scissors and handed one handle to Destiny. Ready, baby girl? Ready, daddy. Together, they cut the ribbon. The crowd erupted in cheers. Confetti fell from somewhere above. And Marcus Thompson, former janitor, patent inventor, single father, felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The first year of the center's operation exceeded every expectation. Over 3,000 families received services. The legal clinic won 17 discrimination cases. The job training program placed 200 workers in new positions with fair wages and benefits. The counseling services helped hundreds of people navigate grief, illness, and trauma. Rosa ran the programs with the same fierce determination she'd brought to her decades of secret documentation. At 74, she showed no signs of slowing down. I spent 25 years writing down everything that was wrong, she told Marcus during one of their weekly meetings. Now I get to spend however many years I have left making things right. That's not a job. That's a gift. Jerome's self-defense classes became so popular that he had to add extra sessions. He taught workers how to document harassment, how to protect themselves legally, and how to stand up without putting themselves at risk. The goal isn't to fight, he explained to each new class. The goal is to never have to. But if you do have to, you should know how. Emily's whistleblower consulting firm partnered with the center, providing free services to employees who wanted to report misconduct but didn't know how. She traveled the country speaking at conferences, sharing her story, inspiring others to find their courage. I stayed silent for 2 years, she would say. 2 years of watching terrible things happen and telling myself it wasn't my fight. Then I met a man who reminded me that silence is a choice. And sometimes it's the wrong one. Mrs. Robinson became the unofficial grandmother of the entire center. She organized holiday parties, birthday celebrations, and weekly dinners where families could gather and share their stories. At 75, she had more energy than people half her age. These children need someone to believe in them, she told Marcus. That's all any child needs, really. Someone who looks at them and sees possibility instead of problems. Destiny thrived in her new school, a private academy that had once seemed impossibly out of reach. She made friends, excelled in her classes, and developed a passion for writing that reminded Marcus so much of Sarah it sometimes took his breath away. I'm going to tell stories, she announced one evening over dinner. True stories about people who fight back against bullies, like you, Daddy. I'm not that interesting, baby girl. Yes, you are. Destiny's voice was firm. You taught me that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you're terrified. That's the most interesting thing in the world. Marcus didn't know what to say, so he just hugged her and let the tears come. The second anniversary of Victoria's arrest brought unexpected news. She had applied for early parole, and the hearing was scheduled for March. Denise called Marcus to let him know. You don't have to go, she said. You don't have to see her ever again if you don't want to. I know. But, Marcus sighed. But I think I need to. I need to see for myself if anything has changed. The parole hearing was held at the Federal Women's Prison in downstate Illinois. Marcus drove alone, leaving Destiny with Mrs. Robinson, needing the solitary hours to prepare himself for what he might feel. The prison was smaller than he expected, a cluster of low buildings surrounded by fences and razor wire. He went through security, surrendered his phone, and was led to a hearing room where Victoria's case would be decided. She looked different. 2 years in prison had stripped away the designer clothes, the perfect makeup, the armor of wealth and privilege. Victoria Sterling sat at a table in an orange jumpsuit, her hair gray at the roots, her face thinner and older than Marcus remembered. Their eyes met across the room. Victoria looked away first. The hearing proceeded methodically. Prison officials testified about Victoria's behavior, compliant but not exemplary. A psychologist discussed her progress in counseling, limited but present. Her lawyer argued for mercy, citing her age, her health, her willingness to make amends. Then the board asked if any victims wanted to speak. Marcus stood up. The room went silent as he approached the microphone. He could feel Victoria's eyes on him, heavy with something he couldn't quite identify. Fear, shame, resentment. 2.5 years ago. Marcus began. I was mopping floors in a building that made millions from technology I invented. I had sold my patents to save my wife's life, and when she died anyway, I kept working because I had a daughter who depended on me. I never complained. I never made trouble. I just tried to survive. He looked directly at Victoria. Then you slapped me. Twice. You called me worthless. You demanded I kneel before you like a servant. And when I refused, you tried to destroy my life. You had me fired. You called CPS on my daughter. You created a false narrative that painted me as a violent, unstable stalker. Victoria's face was pale, her hands trembling on the table. For a long time I hated you, Marcus continued. I dreamed about this moment standing in front of you, watching you suffer, knowing I had won. He paused. But hate is heavy. It weighs you down, keeps you stuck in the past. And I have a daughter who needs me present, not stuck. He took a breath. I'm not here to ask for mercy or to demand punishment. That's not my job. I'm here to tell you the truth because I think you've spent your whole life surrounded by people who told you what you wanted to hear instead of what you needed to know. Marcus straightened his shoulders. You were cruel. Not because you had to be, but because you could be. You had every advantage, money, education, power, and you used them to hurt people who couldn't fight back. That's not strength. That's weakness. Real strength is what Rosa showed documenting injustice for 25 years without recognition. Real strength is what Jerome showed saving that footage, even though it could have cost him everything. Real strength is what my 8-year-old daughter showed when she told me to be brave. He looked at the parole board. I don't know if Victoria Sterling has changed. I don't know if 2 years is enough time to undo a lifetime of entitlement. That's for you to decide. He turned back to Victoria. But I want you to know something. I'm not invisible anymore. Neither are the thousands of workers you dismissed and degraded over the years. We built something beautiful out of the ugliness you created. And every day that center helps people reclaim their dignity. Marcus stepped back from the microphone. That's all I have to say. The board deliberated for 3 hours. In the end, they denied parole, citing insufficient evidence of genuine rehabilitation. Victoria would serve at least 3 more years before becoming eligible again. As Marcus left the prison, he felt lighter than he had in months. Not because Victoria remained locked up, her imprisonment brought him no joy, but because he had finally said everything he needed to say. The chapter was closed. The weight was lifted. He drove home through the Illinois farmland, watching the sun set over golden fields, thinking about everything that had led him to this moment. A slap in a lobby, a daughter's faith, a network of allies who refused to stay silent. Sometimes he thought the worst moments of our lives become the foundation for something better. Not because suffering is good, but because it shows us who we really are. Marcus Thompson had been shown his true self, and he was proud of what he'd found. 3 years later, Destiny stood at a podium of her own. At 12 years old, she had been invited to speak at a national conference on workplace dignity, the youngest presenter in the event's history. Marcus sat in the front row, Rosa beside him, tears already streaming down his weathered face. My name is Destiny Thompson. She began, her voice clear and strong. And I want to tell you about my dad. She talked about the night he came home with a split lip and broken glasses. About watching him struggle to decide whether to fight back or stay safe. About the moment he chose courage over comfort. He always says he's not a hero. Destiny continued. He says he just got tired of being invisible. But I think that's exactly what heroes do. They get tired of watching bad things happen, and they decide to do something about it. She looked at Marcus, her eyes shining. My mom died when I was 7. I barely remember her voice anymore, but I remember what she taught me. She said that the world isn't changed by people who wait for permission. It's changed by people who decide they've had enough. Destiny straightened the notes she wasn't using. My dad had enough when a woman slapped him and told him to kneel. Rosa Martinez had enough after 25 years of being ignored. Jerome Williams had enough when he was told to delete footage of abuse. Emily Chen had enough when she realized her silence made her complicit. Her voice rose. You don't have to be rich or powerful or famous to change the world. You just have to decide that something matters more than your fear. For my dad, it was me. For Rosa, it was justice. For Jerome and Emily, it was their conscience. For all of them, it was the belief that dignity isn't a privilege, it's a right. The audience was silent, captivated. I'm 12 years old. I can't vote or drive or get a job. But I can speak. I can write. I can tell the truth about what happens when ordinary people refuse to be invisible. Destiny smiled Sarah's smile. Marcus thought his heart breaking and healing at the same time. That's what I'm going to do with my life. Tell stories about people like my dad. People who stand up when everyone else sits down. She looked at the audience one last time. Thank you for listening. And remember, you're never too small to shine a light. The applause was deafening. Marcus was on his feet before he knew he was moving, pushing through the crowd to reach his daughter. He swept her into his arms and held her tight, not caring about the cameras or the tears streaming down his face. I'm so proud of you, he whispered. Your mom would be so proud of you. I know, Daddy. Destiny hugged him back. I can feel her watching. That night, they visited Sarah's grave together. The cemetery was quiet in the twilight, the headstone glowing softly in the fading light. Marcus had brought flowers purple and gold, always her favorites. Destiny knelt beside the grave, tracing her mother's name with her fingers. Hi, Mommy. I gave a speech today, a big one with lots of important people watching. Daddy cried, but he says they were happy tears. She paused. I told them about you, how you taught us to be brave. I hope you heard it wherever you are. Marcus knelt beside her, placing the flowers against the headstone. We did it, Sarah, he said softly. We built something good out of all that pain. The center is thriving. Destiny is thriving. And that woman who hurt me, she's still in prison, but I don't think about her much anymore. I think about all the people we've helped, all the workers who found their voices, all the families who found their way. He touched the cold stone. I wish you were here. Every day I wish you were here. But I know you'd be proud of what we've become. What Destiny has become. His voice caught. She's going to change the world, Sarah. Just like you always believed she would. They stayed until the stars came out, father and daughter, sitting together in the quiet darkness, remembering the woman who had taught them both how to love and how to fight. On the drive home, Destiny fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the emotions of the day. Marcus drove slowly, savoring the peace, thinking about everything that had brought them to this moment. 5 years ago, he had been invisible, a janitor mopping floors, hiding from his own potential, telling himself that survival was enough. Then a cruel woman had slapped him, and everything changed. Not because the slap was special. People were slapped every day, metaphorically, emotionally, sometimes physically. Workers were humiliated. Dignity was stripped away. Voices were silenced. It happened constantly, invisibly, in lobbies and offices and factories around the world. What made the difference wasn't the slap, it was the response. Marcus had chosen to stand up. Rosa had chosen to speak. Jerome had chosen to preserve the truth. Emily had chosen her conscience over her career. Together, they had built something stronger than any individual could have created alone. That was the lesson Marcus realized. Not that one person could change the world, but that ordinary people standing together refusing to be invisible could transform everything. He pulled into the driveway of the house they'd bought last year. A real house with a yard and a porch and room for the dog Destiny had named Justice. Mrs. Robinson lived next door now in a cottage Marcus had built specifically for her. Destiny stirred as he turned off the engine. "Are we home?" "Yeah, baby girl, we're home." She climbed out of the car yawning and shuffled toward the front door. But before she went inside, she turned back. "Daddy." "Yeah. Thank you for being brave. That night and every night since." Her voice was sleepy but sincere. "You taught me that dignity isn't something people give you. It's something you claim for yourself. And once you claim it, nobody can take it away." Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. "You taught me that too, baby girl. More than you know." She smiled and disappeared inside. A moment later, the porch light came on Destiny's signal that she was safe, that she was home, that all was well. Marcus stood in the driveway, looking up at the stars, feeling the weight of everything he'd survived and everything he'd built. 5 years ago, a woman had slapped him and called him worthless. 5 years later, he had a daughter who spoke at national conferences, a center that had helped thousands of families, a network of allies who had become a family, and a name that meant something to people who had once felt invisible. Victoria Sterling had wanted to break him. Instead, she had set him free. Marcus Thompson walked up the steps of his home, opened the door, and stepped inside, leaving the darkness behind. He had spent too much of his life being invisible. Now, he was a light that would never be extinguished. And that was exactly what Sarah would have wanted.